Barnaby Joyce, thank you so much for joining me. You no more believe this global warming alarmism than I do, but as Deputy Prime Minister, you can't destroy the government by blowing up its mad plan for net zero. You must be in a world of pain. How are you going to resolve this?
Well, you go through first principles of saying why you're here, and the reason any of us are here is not as Lord and Master, but as servants of our electorate. And of course, the Nationals are exclusively a regional-based regional party. We don't represent people in urban electorates. And it stands to reason that how people in our seats see things are sometimes vastly different than other areas. And when you come forward with policy, you have to be very, very mindful of the people in Dubbo who live in Dubbo, of the people in Tamworth who live in South Tamworth, or on Petra Avenue. You have to be very mindful of what's happening in the suburbs of Rockhampton, and in the industrial city of Gladstone, and in Mount Isa, or in that case, Geraldton. These are the people who actually live in the streets.
Barnaby Joyce, what you must be mindful of is that here you're being asked to tick off on a plan that will cause a lot of pain, but for what gain? Can I ask you what Julia Gillard dismissed as the bolt question and refused to answer, as did Kevin Rudd, as did, well, Bill Short and just about anyone I ask? It's actually the key question. If we cut our emissions to net zero, like the Prime Minister wants, by how much will that cut the world's temperature? Well,
there's no action by Australia that's going to change the temperature of the globe at all. I mean, it's part of a sort of a global action plan, and but Australia by itself makes no difference whatsoever. No difference at all. I mean, that's
all right. So we've got
to say other things and to shy away from the question is to not be straight with people.
Exactly correct, and I'm grateful to you for answering. I think you're the first political leader to do so. The other part of it is, so it won't actually change the temperature, and the world collectively will barely make a difference either. It won't change the world's temperature. Now, what about the cost? That's the second question, obviously. If we cut our emissions to net zero, have you been told how much this will cost us per person?
Well, that is the purpose of why we're going through this deliberation this week, Andrew, and the reason for a decision that will go for decades, I think we need a week to go over it. And we've been doing that. And for myself, I've tried to be the impartial arbiter, because I think that's, as a leader, that's my role. It can't be the views of one person, it's the views of the party, because that party represents so many corners of regional Australia, and they're not going to have my independent views foisted on them. I'm supposed to be the vessel that goes into bat for their views. And the best way to determine their views is, of course, through the resources of the members and senators who are in those electorates to hear those views. Now,
absolutely.
We've had
the question they will have is how much, Barnaby? They'll be asking you, Barnaby, how much is this going to cost us? That's what they'll be saying. Well, you know it's not going to make a difference. So what is actually the cost of these policies per person, even by 2050, by 2030, whatever?
Well, my answer to that is I don't know. But what I do know, and I think it's, see, on that, Andrew, it's not flippant. I know some people will grab that and run with it. In any budget, whether it's a Labor budget or a Liberal budget or a coalition budget, if you go to year 4 on the forward estimates, have you ever seen them ever come to be true? They're generally miles out. You know, I mean, I don't even know why they bother putting them in. You know,
I got you. But
so this model,
Joyce,
you know, when people say
Joyce, you're selling. This is the frustration for me, right? And I really appreciate your honesty. You'll probably be punished for it, but this is ridiculous. You're being honest when other politicians are getting praised for being dishonest. It's a policy that won't make a difference for a cost you don't even know. How can anyone buy a product that they don't know will work and they don't know the cost?
Well, what I know is that, of course, you can't let the Labor Party is all for this. They're going to legislate it. And I think that's a really big difference, Andrew. They're going to legislate it. And once that happens, that's what the Labor Party are going to do. She's locked in. And we're on that train ride no matter where it goes. And the Labor Party are doing it without any understanding of how they get there or any understanding of what the cost is. Now, we are not legislating it. We are not. The Labor Party are setting a 2030 commitment. You've got to get moving on that right now. You'll be locking in things and locking people out of their job. What we have been doing in the last week is to answer your question and to look into it and to say, well, what is required as far as we're concerned to mollify, remove, and to make sure in some of the what we determined to be some of the outcomes, and to make sure that regional people are left in the same or better position. And that is exactly what we are doing. And straight away we ruled out things such as 2030 targets, just saying, well, don't even bother mentioning that, because there is no way on earth that one can ever fly. This one is incredibly difficult, but let's see where we land. But the other one...
I'm so glad you've done that. You've made a difference, but when you start talking about, well, Labor will be worse and we maybe have to do something, this is the traditional Liberal way of excusing their bad behaviour. We'll do what the Labor Party wants, but we'll do it better.
Well, can I just say something? I think it's really important. We have not said we are doing this. That decision is yet to be made. Good. We have not said we are doing this.
Excellent.
That decision is yet to be made.
Well, I still live in hope then for a few more days. Good. But can I go to the question, if to cut our emissions like we've got to, like the Prime Minister wants, this net zero, just like Boris Johnson is promising in Britain. Now, in June, you yourself said, I believe we should have nuclear power. If you want baseline, deliverable, 24/7, zero emissions power, nuclear does it. That's what you said then. You're absolutely correct. Can you explain to me why the Prime Minister has ruled out using nuclear power to get to net zero?
Because the Labor Party, if the Labor Party in a bipartisan form came forward as proper statesmen and women and said they support nuclear power, as the Labor right do, by the way, then we would have a nuclear industry in here, and that would be a great outcome for our nation. I do want Australia to move to a position where they believe that we're smart enough to be with, I think we're the only OECD country without nuclear power. Maybe I'll be corrected on that, but
that's banned. The only one that's banned it.
Yeah, the only one that's banned it. There you go. We're the only one that's banned it. So this is crazy. But the only way we can get away from this sort of this type of worldview is for the Labor Party to be statesmen enough alike to make the decision that their right wing has already made. And that is, they've moved on, the rest of the people have moved on. We are really being held back by Anthony Albanese on this.
Yeah, but once again, so we're seeing, so you'd agree, I mean, it's blindingly obvious, and Boris Johnson has just underlined it. You can't get to net zero in any credible way without nuclear power if you want 24/7 deliverable, zero emissions energy, right? You can't do it. And the only reason you're suggesting that the Prime Minister refuses to even suggest that is he's scared of Labor. He's scared he can't win an argument. Barnaby, this is not leadership.
Well, the issue, of course, for me, is a clear understanding of what is happening in England and Europe and China. They have an energy crisis. They've had a six-fold increase in energy prices in the United Kingdom. The reason for it was the inability for renewables to fill the void, as the modelling said it would, that it wouldn't be stable as the modelling said it would. The modelling was wrong. I'm sure the modellers weren't car thieves and villains. They would have gone forward and done the best job, but just that their best job was wrong. And so we've got to make sure that we don't put our nation in that position. And I also believe in coal-fired power, and I think there's capacity for us to have a baseload deliverable. I acknowledge fully that the Prime Minister has a right, by being Prime Minister of Australia, to go to Glasgow and state his position. I acknowledge fully that the Prime Minister is leader of the Cabinet, but I'm sure everybody understands that it is not a foregone conclusion that the Nationals agree to this, not by a long shot. We will do our earnest and best endeavours to try and make sure that we set a path where we keep harmony in the coalition.
Look, I started off by saying you must be in a world of pain, and I can hear that you are. I mean, this is a policy. We don't know the costs. We know it wouldn't work, and we're eschewing the one thing that could help us to get there, which is nuclear power, and the Prime Minister's too scared to sell it. I mean, it's just a nightmare, but as you suggest, you've got to keep the government together. Barnaby Joyce, I wish you all the best in agonising your way through this. I don't envy you. Thank you so much for your time.